This person.
Well, good morning as we're sitting here at LTV on this beautiful, beautiful morning, Friday morning, August 23rd. I can't believe I'm hearing myself saying August 23rd when you have as many kids as I do and you realize what it really means. So we're here to continue with the concept of public access and the Hello Hello show that's been on the air since 1980. And of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Ann, and of course the likes of you out there to make it your business to enhance and fortify this concept. This morning I have a guest, as I usually do with my guests that I really hardly know anything about, and that we're going to decipher the whole idea of getting to know each other on the air, interacting, conversing. Elena Lesser Bruun, I met her last week. It was here at the opening at LTV. And sure enough, before you know it, there was a connection and there was any intelligent compatibility, emotional compatibility, I might add also. Maybe we'll find out even more so. So, first of all, Elena, thank you so much for trusting me and coming here to sit with us and we to wonder together about the nature of our being on planet Earth or something to that effect. I read a little bit about you. I couldn't resist the temptation. I can't say that really it formed my line of desire to get to know specific things that I am not familiar with already. But first of all, welcome to the show, and we'd like to hear a few words about Elena.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It was quite a surprise. I came as a guest of someone else who knew one of the artists who was exhibiting, and I thought I would wander around a bit. And I didn't get to wander very much because Chaim, I guess, captured my attention as I walked in. And I know I was next in line. I learned very quickly I was next in line to be on his show. And fortunately, I've done this once or twice before in my life, so I'm not uncomfortable with it. But the fact that he didn't tell me one thing about what we were going to discuss was new to me. So I am extremely curious as to what he wants to know about me. And I assume the reverse is true as well, or he
Yes,
wouldn't have invited me.
yes, definitely. But I there's so much that is existing as a given, really, in the territory of trying to take away from people's misery, so to speak, for lack of a better description, indirectly, of course, and by doing so, liberating them and maybe helping them make the right choices. You, as a therapist, I'm sure you know much more than the average person out there about the need of people that find themselves entangled in the complexity of life, and suddenly you show up and you say, well, there is a light, and that light I will maybe introduce to you, and then maybe that will entangle this complexity to make it actually something that is meaningful and profound. Am I accurate in the way I kind of describe the?
Yes, for sure. And I think that's the way that most people think about seeing a therapist or going to a therapist. But the longer I do it, and I've been at this a very long time, um, it is very similar to the way many artists think. I was just conjuring that up, in that I've learned that less is more. I I don't solve problems for people or come up with the aha, you can do this and you should do this. It's much more helping people own what they really want and figure out what it is they really want. And then, as was the line in the Democratic Convention, they do stuff, they figure it out. And it's amazing what's happened. I do less than I used to, but we all, anyone in a couple, because I do a lot of work with couples and families, meaning larger family groups, the longer I'm at this, the less I do and the more they do. So all I do is help them get to a point of being creative enough that they can solve their own problem.
It's interesting. You say all you do. That's a lot.
Right.
That's erecting an infrastructure that is not known
Well,
to them. That's providing them an awareness for a stage that they are not aware that was there to begin with. That's allowing them to find a certain stability that will help them getting to know themselves better. I mean, it's a lot.
well, first I have to make a connection with them. If they don't like me enough to come back or have a sense that they couldn't trust that I have their interests at heart,
So, what is the nature of this connection?
it's emotional. It's an emotional thing. I share, and this is very important because I think our field is changing, all kinds of therapy, because it turns out that the old Freudian blank screen where I don't tell you anything about myself and you project onto me what you think I think or think I feel, and we develop a relationship that way. But it's very different now. I will share situations from my own life and my own experience, including negative ones, including a problem or two that I actually have also or have had. And they feel the connection that way
So, it helps
because,
them succumb. It helps them feel more comfortable. It helps them feel like it's easier to trust you this way.
yes,
Yeah.
it's almost miraculous.
But it's interesting you mentioned Freud because I got to meet Dr. John Sarno for that, that wrote The
I,
Mind Body. And I was actually his top example of what a person compatible with the concept of TMS is all about. That was his logo,
uh-huh.
literally. He saved my life and all this. But I remember that I was asking him that I want to go through some sessions of therapy with this because he erected and created a new group of therapists that they were all originally Freudians to be compatible with TMS. And what does it mean to be compatible with TMS? It means that knowledge is the cure.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't sit on the sofa, even though it's not a bad idea to sit on the sofa and relax and speak up, but it won't get you anywhere. So we're not here to resolve your problems or solve your.
Mm-hmm.
We're just here to provide you with knowledge that in itself is going to take care of all that which you need. So he said, but you don't need to go see a therapist. The reading of the book, the digesting of the concept is already helping you. You're good to go. I said, but I'm just so curious. I really need to do that. So he set me up with the head of the faculty and all this. The first thing she tells me when I get into the office, I want you to know I heard about you. And I'm sure she says that to everyone that Dr. John Sauter will send her way. And I can't wait to learn from you.
Mm.
Because she's telling me you equal as far as TMS and what you know about TMS. And I'm always open for surprises. And indeed, it was unbelievable. I opened my mouth and I cried for 10 minutes for an unknown reason. And then I said, oh, I guess I'm I guess I needed that, not because of the concept of TMS. Or when I went through, I needed that because I needed that. You know what I mean? It was like something, okay. So I asked her, did we exit the reality of TMS into a different domain now? And she said, no. She said, no. And it's amazing how things develop between us. Anyway, so why am I saying that? I'm saying it changed. I can only guess what the nature of the change is, that everything is very experimental and modernistic today. And people want to adapt to the speed of things, the availability of things, that which is everything is at your disposal really nowadays. You can find out what your mental condition is, what you're going through.
Yeah.
And so you end up supposedly need that connection less and less, supposedly, because you get the answers so quickly and so as you go along. I mean,
I actually think therapy is a way of slowing down. If you're trying to move too quickly, you you don't get there. It's very interesting to me how that works. It's almost, I don't want to say it, it's literally hypnotic, but when you're working on a problem, you have to slow down to be able to really feel what you feel. Sometimes you don't even know what you feel. Sometimes you get a burst and you wind up crying, but it's much more, oh, I never thought of it that way, instead of, I never thought of it that way. Now let's move on to the next topic.
okay.
I think it's as a friend of mine said years ago when we were both working on dissertations. I just think therapy is a special form of friendship, a friendship among equals, and that's a major shift.
But it comes with a set of skills that you must have to be given it as a condition,
Yeah,
really.
well, I can put aside the best skill is being able to share what I've been through. At times, it doesn't dominate the work.
So how much are you allowed to be yourself in that session?
If I can't be myself, I can't.
No, of course you can, but how much, to what extent, to what degree?
I feel very strongly about this one. If I can't be myself in the room, I don't think I can really help.
Because playing the role is not something negative. At least a portion of it.
A portion of it, yes.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, I can't. If you're my client, I can't ask you.
I have a feeling I will be.
Let's pretend.
Let's pretend this is you interviewing me to see if you're going to accept me to your.
Let's see. Where do we start? You usually say, the client usually says, I don't know where to start. And I say, start anywhere. All roads lead to Rome.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Right? My job is not to tell you what's wrong with you. It's to help you figure out whatever you want, whatever you need to figure out to feel more in control of your life and make decisions that you need to make.
Yeah, and you should have said all roads leads to what Rome used to be.
To what Rome used to be. Oh God.
So I assume that you if I was to think of therapy, it would be like more than two groups. So two groups would be like, okay, you're a little child and you have some kind of a quality that tells you already in early stages of your life that you have what it takes. You have enough compassion, enough realization that the world needs love and to be handed love, to a listening ear, just like a comforting companion, so to speak, and that develops to become something serious in your life, and you act upon it, and you become like a therapist, for lack of a better. And the other one would be that you have to invent certain things in your life in order to find out actually that this is what you're going to be doing. So what kind would your aspirations would come exactly from where, and what supports that for you to be sitting here next to me after 4 or 5 decades of straightforward work in this medium?
How did I come to this?
Yeah, what fed it more than anything?
Well, I was supposed to be a music teacher. And I'm laughing because I have only one regret, and that's, or one big regret, and that's that I didn't try to pursue a career as a singer. Because to me, the sound of a beautiful voice is worth everything. However, when I was a student teacher, I realized I don't care if these kids like music or not, or whether they want to sing or play an instrument or not. What I seemed to be curious about was why they couldn't behave, or why they seemed to be wandering off, looking at the window panes, which one kid did. He turned out to be a world-class physicist, and he was counting the window panes, but that's another story.
Of course. But of course.
That leads us elsewhere.
I wouldn't expect anything less than that.
Right. And I wasn't bothered by the fact that some of them wouldn't behave. I just wanted to know why. What was that all about? And some of them seemed very unhappy. That led me into guidance counseling, and I started there, and it gradually morphed until I wound up realizing, it's the parents. If the kids are having trouble, often it's because the parents don't know what to do, or they're bad parents first. But then I realized, no, parents have problems too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a parent, and I certainly learned what it was like to try to be a good parent firsthand. The ultimate practicum for family therapists is having your own children.
Yes, absolutely.
And your own marriage.
So did you ever find yourself in your entire career facing a potential patient that you just ended up giving him or her a crash course and send them home and say, this one is on me?
Wait, say that again? I'm not sure where you're going with that.
I'm not so sure either myself. But I mean, did you ever face a situation where you would look at a person that just came to see you, to meet with you, and you have a feeling that you can just give him like a crash course, like an advice, and send him home, and you can do very well without me, and this one is on me, kind of thing, I mean, it's a serious question, really, but I cannot ask it in a serious fashion.
Right. Or is it, how do I know whether they need to be with me for a while?
Look, can you sometimes sense that people don't really need your help? But they're still sitting in front of you?
Well, there's a theory that the person in the family who comes for therapy, certainly if it's of their own volition, is usually the healthy one.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
Right,
that
because they know that something's wrong, right? And
they're willing
to look at it.
Yes. Because I remember that Dr. John Sarno stated that his realization that everything that he did in his life as an orthopedic surgeon and a physician and whatnot, and he was a psychiatrist also, wasn't really quite, he couldn't believe that he had to go through so many years doing what he's doing, believing in what he was believing, and to find out that it's all wrong, that it's all.
Yeah.
And so the question is, many people realize things like that, but what do they do about it? That's the hard part.
Right.
Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to succumb to what reality dictates and continue? Or are you going to, just do without and erect something new according to what it takes courage to actually do the right thing. Isn't it funny that we realize that it takes courage to do the right thing?
I had a very, very close friend who died. That's why I'm putting him in the past, who was a brilliant psychologist and went to Harvard, I could go on and on about his credentials. And he was funny, and he was smart and lovable, all kinds of wonderful things. But he had some very, very early trauma. And this is not a patient. This was a close friend. And it turned out that his family did an intervention because he was abusing or overusing alcohol and basically hurting himself that way. And he said to me one time on the phone, "I'm. It's very hard for me to admit that I have a problem and to try to get some help. And I probably need to go be hospitalized and so on and so forth." And I said, "You mean it takes courage?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I just found myself saying, "Well, then that's what you ought to try to do, because that's probably what's lacking at this point."
Courage, because it's a form of admission, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not coping. And if you can do that, that's step one.
Yeah.
You've already accomplished something.
But isn't there a way to eliminate the need to have courage, so it would be kind of smoother and simpler? You know what I mean? It's like, because I know my father was an alcoholic, and he definitely didn't need courage to realize what he's going through and what his life is all about.
Okay.
It was all about nothing but this knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
But if he didn't do anything about it, or if he did and just went back to normal afterwards, like nothing happened, then obviously there's a problem.
Yes.
There's a greater problem than the problem one thought that was there to begin with.
Right.
So but the fact that he admitted it and shared it with you, he already was saying, "I'm actually was." That conversation probably was already starting that process.
He was basically saying, "I don't have the courage to admit or to do anything about the problem." And guess what? He died. He died.
But what do you think made him actually have this conversation with you? Because that takes courage too.
Yeah. He was able to do that much, and that was certainly something. He had quite a lot of insight. He just couldn't ask for help.
He couldn't materialize that to help himself.
Yes, he could help other people.
Yes.
I'm sure I discussed some of my problems with him over the years.
Yes.
And our families were friends. We were very close.
So what does it mean to be an extraordinary, brilliant psychologist? Other than the obvious things with any profession, but what is the nature between that relates to that brilliance?
I honestly think it goes back to your word, authentic. And can I slip in a comment or two about Kamala Harris?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah,
okay,
as you please.
I've been inundated with.
I'm apolitic, but it's okay. We live in this country together.
I hope my younger son is not watching this, because he threatens to destroy my television.
Oh my God! Well, because you're consumed by the news.
Yes, I think. How many hours was the convention? Over 4 days, at least 5 times 20 hours. I probably put in.
Yeah, and you know what? I watched out of all this only the speech by Kamala. I was curious. I needed it. I needed it. I needed her to tell me that she's stable, that she's worthy. I needed her to...
Did she succeed?
Yeah. I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised, to say the least. I cannot tell you that I'm fully convinced, but I'm pleasantly surprised. That's a good step in the right direction.
Okay. Well, she strikes me as... she has so many qualities that are like the best therapists. And it's her authenticity. She's able to be authentic and loving and caring, and you feel better in her presence. It's just the way she is, and I don't think there's anything phony in it. I was not a huge fan of Kamala when she ran for president before. Or competed to be the nominee. But either she's grown, or I know more about her, seen her enough, and she really has an authenticity.
So what was the point you were trying to...
If you're wondering what makes the difference, what makes someone a brilliant psychologist, it's the same quality that she exudes, right? And it can sound, there's so much to it that's trite. You have to be kind, you have to be compassionate. And now we get to one of my favorite topics, which is not to say that I'm a brilliant psychologist. I'm not, and I'm a marriage and family therapist legally.
I
But
like your humility, but you a little more than that, of course.
yeah,
But,
no, I know there are people I have not been able to help, and I've reached a point in my life and in my career I can pass them on to someone else. It's rare. I can usually make a connection, but
but it has nothing to do with you, obviously, this because it's you're talking
well,
about a
sometimes I
person.
wonder: am I doing something wrong? Because nothing's changing. I'm not helping, right? And I actually can admit that it's not easy, but I can do it. And I know exactly the type of person that I have the hardest time with.
And you know it ahead of time?
I can
Can you
tell
sense
you,
it? Yes.
I can tell you,
Yeah.
I have a hard time with people who have a hard time talking to me.
Yeah. Well, obviously, that's getting the issue nowhere. It's like a.
Well, I
But
feel no,
yeah.
I go into my failure mode. I'm not something. I must be doing something wrong if they're not talking to me, and I have to work very hard on. No, they're just shy, or they're scared, or give them a chance. I have to do work on myself.
Yeah. Speaking of doing work on yourself, how do you relate to the state of mind and the psyche of you experiencing the difficulties of life or going through emotional changes? And
Hmm.
do you swiftly and quickly enough realize if and when you need help? Or, and if you
Um,
do you have a way to seek it and find it? Is that something that is common practice? Or is it because you're a therapist and you see so many other people that are going through that you are the one who offers the help and the solutions, you find it difficult to actually work with yourself,
right.
about yourself?
Um, I don't know if I should tell.
You should.
All right, I'm going to tell you the truth.
Of
I'm
course,
going
the
to be.
truth. I hope so.
My husband died. Here, I'm self-disclosing to you. My husband died I don't know, 9 or 10 months ago. And sometimes it feels like years ago, and sometimes it feels like today or yesterday. And I slip right back. I know enough about grief um, and soon after he died, I took a professional 5-day course on helping people cope with grief. And it did help me do that, but it also helped me.
Yes, of
So I
course.
know a little more about it than I did a year ago, say.
Yeah.
But where was I going with this? Um, I I have reached a few points where I thought I'm I thought it would be hard when he died, and he was sick, very sick, for a couple of years. I thought it would be very tough, and it was, but it was even harder than I thought it would be. But what I tell people, and it's almost always it's true, that I'm coping better than I thought I would.
Yeah,
So, do I need a therapist? There are days when I think I do.
I see.
But then something happens. I put my other foot in front of it and keep walking, and it gets better.
Almost like
But
getting a taste of your own medicine kind of
yes,
thing.
I have to be therapist to myself.
Yes.
And if there was someone I knew or knew of, I might really check in for an appointment or two. But I don't feel like I need, it's just a terrible situation and it's life.
So as
So,
the world is changing, are there obviously inevitably adjustments that needs to take place
mhm.
on the behalf of greater understanding, faster ability to uh, to fathom and realize and digest easier and faster, and also everything is at our disposal. So is the system compatible with the changes supposedly that are taking place, and therefore our attitude and our reactions and our actions should change accordingly? Does that take place coherently?
Um,
Even if it's on the personal level, each therapist on his own. Um,
helping themselves.
yes, or understanding the changes of the world and how it
Oh,
comes into the equation of your profession and how you implement, if at all,
well,
personally and intimately. I mean,
that's why I have to go to the movies a lot and watch TV a lot
what's that? Oh, you mean distract
and
yourself?
read all the trashy novels I can get my hands on.
So, that's a good point.
Because I have to have some sense of what people are talking about so that we make a connection.
As an artist, I can tell you that I actually not only notice but acknowledge the changes in this by just simply just smelling, just sensing. And
Can you give
like
me,
like
help me out here? What kinds of changes, or just a couple of changes that you're wondering about these days?
well, I mean, I would sometimes, just because I have young children,
Mm-hmm.
I can find myself tell my kid, get over it.
Ah,
But it doesn't mean that I'm not a thorough individual and a very strict father or someone who understands the depth of things.
mm-hmm.
It's just that I'm trying. But then I realize I cannot just say, get over it. I need,
Chaim, stop.
yeah, 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 but I have to add something very
Okay,
important. So I
no,
say, I
okay.
need him or her to understand that get over it means that not every occasion and every occurrence requires this kind of reaction. That means you can spare yourself from unnecessary self inflicting pain
Yes.
and confusion by choosing your battles. Now, you
Oh,
talk to a 5 year old or a 9 year old, they
right.
understand that. For example, if my 5 year old, show me a 4 5 year old that wakes up always smiling. They always cry, they're tired. They're
Absolutely.
still realizing, what does it mean? I went to sleep, now I'm not asleep. They wonder about many things. So I'm not going to tell him, why are you crying? I just tell him, for example, if he's crying before he goes to sleep, I say, you know how Papa feels about that. I don't think it's a good idea to cry before you go to sleep, because then you have a hard time falling asleep. Then your dreams are taking away from that crying, and then instead of dreaming about playing beautiful games, you dream about something that is not. But things of that communicate like a very. But when I say get over it, I mean there is another viable option here. It doesn't have to be that, and
Okay,
and maybe
so,
it's because he doesn't know better.
well, what about a question to him? Like,
I say only sometimes I say that. It's not
right, right,
like
right, right. Well, let's pretend that it's not you, it's some other parent that says, well, it's not a good idea to do this because blah, 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 and you just try to get over it or think about something else. But you're giving advice when you do it that way. One other idea is, well, what else could you do other than cry?
not do what you're doing.
Well,
That's it. So we're back to
yes,
square one kind of thing.
but then if you enter the conversation with him, say, what else could you do? How about we think of some ideas and put them out on the table? I'm big on all ideas are good. It's brainstorming.
Yes,
You know.
but if I give, yeah, go ahead.
No, no.
If I give you more than you deserve, and I would like, and then I realize it, and I would like to take some back. Now that's a complex reality right there. Let's just say
Right.
you're 11, and if you have 5 or 6 kids, your kids already know that before 13 they don't get their devices.
Yeah.
Okay, but for some reason, the 11-year-old end up with a device and in a controlled fashion. But it's not common to what this family motto is all about.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a parent, I can say, listen, I made a mistake. So we need to fix it. So either we fix it together, or I'm going to fix it alone, which means I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. So I give a choice how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
But first, before we can do anything, I need you to admit that what I say makes sense. That you are actually enjoying a privilege here that maybe happened on the account of maybe a weak moment on my behalf, wrong decision on my behalf. And now we're realizing otherwise. So we got to make the adjustments. So either we do it together and you will feel like you're empowered by it because you're a part of that process. Or I say, give it to me and we'll see what happens. And if you feel like upset, you want to cry, go do all the crying you want, whatever it is, and we can still talk later. So there isn't much variety of options here other than you must take action. And not all action is pleasing. And
well, I find myself trying to understand what makes a 5-year-old cry before he can go to sleep. So I don't feel like if I'm his parent, I don't feel like I know enough yet, right? That's what I'm struggling with in talking about getting over it. He may not. It may
no,
be.
I never said to the 5-year-old getting over it. He's too young for that.
Okay.
No. I said the 11 or the 13, whatever. But with him, I know why he's crying, because he knows that he's loved incredibly, constantly. So if there's any change on that level of intensity, he needs to recapture that which he's missing, even if it's momentarily, and he's doing it by crying. So when he cries for no evident reason, he knows that we're going to ask him, "Tell me why you're crying. I don't understand." So right there, you create that warmth, that closeness, that and he's getting what he wants. So I respect the way he chooses to behave in order to get what he wants, because it works for him, at least.
Yeah, for a 5-year-old, coupling the discipline part of it with love is what works. I mean, that otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. Now, going back to your, first of all, let me just mention we're sitting here with Elena Lesser Bruun on Friday morning, August 23rd, year 2024, here with the Hello Show. My name is Haim Mizrahi. Yeah. And again, I'm so happy to have you here, because I always wondered about, when you take rubber bands, it's so easy if you have like a bunch of them. If you were to just smoosh them like this, they will get to a point where you can never pull them apart.
Okay.
So quickly they become like something like, how did that happen? So when you are sitting across from your patients, let's say, and you're discussing really serious issues, and do you find yourself sometimes in a situation where suddenly, instantly, the situation becomes so entangled so quickly that you don't know how it happened and you don't have a way to redo it, to kind of to fix it, so to speak, for lack of a better word?
Are you talking about what seems like a misunderstanding?
Yeah, or just let's just say there's an interaction taking place, and then there's a level of complexity that's happening as you interact with those, that maybe the emotions on the behalf of the people in front of you are so abruptly so high that the things are just becoming so entangled that you had no chance to prevent it from happening. And if you try to realize you have to throw this batch and start fresh, if you know what I mean. Of course.
Well, sometimes I'll say, this is getting very confusing, or this is getting very tense. Can you feel it? Where is it in your body? Does your neck get really tense? That kind of thing. We have to slow it down so you can recover. And we can even take a break. You can go for a 5 or 10 minute walk. There are strategies to calm things down so people can think. Once you've reached a certain level of physiological arousal, you can't think anymore. That's what happens with couples, and they wind up arguing through the night, right? Trying to make something better, but it can't work because they can't think anymore. I think that's what
you recommend for them to do the arguing when they're not with you, and then when they come to you, to actually.
In the beginning, if they argue a lot and don't get anywhere, I will often say, not always, but often say, don't try to have any, don't try to resolve anything out of here. Just bring it here. Because if you
Is that because they're
constantly,
not ready, or and when they're ready, they're
yeah,
allowed
they don't
to?
know what to do.
They don't know.
They don't know how to stop a fight.
I
So
see.
it just goes totally out of
Oh
control.
boy.
And then they think, if say I'm making this up, but if they're arguing 10 hours a day, they can't ever think about anything. And it starts to infect work, starts to make them think, well, maybe this marriage isn't going to work, or I can't believe this marriage can work. Whereas if they contain it somehow, initially to the therapy room, but then they can have a meeting. Meetings are great.
But if we need so much work in order for this togetherness to work, why is it worth it? Why do we have to
Sometimes
do
it
it?
isn't.
No, in general, not just case here, case there. I mean, why why do we need to struggle so much and then believe that we can somehow patch it and suddenly it's okay? It doesn't seem like it's possible even.
It
It,
is
it,
for some
it,
people.
but it's kind of almost like kind of artificial, inevitably. It must be artificial because otherwise they won't have. Otherwise, they would have this situation that no matter how complex it is, that they can fix themselves. And once you need help from an external source, you're in real trouble. You're in real trouble in the sense that you got to a point where you yourself and your partner is not enough to give the answers. That's not a good indication. So, do we face this truth as a therapist and as a patient? And if we do you see that people are doing something about it, admitting, you know what, I'm not going? It's just like, God forbids, doctor says you're diagnosed with cancer, and then you say, okay, fine, you're giving me about a year. I'd like to live this year
Yeah.
without any treatments, and I'd like to just do what I
Mm-hmm.
want. Or I will go all in and try everything I can to survive,
Yeah.
in that sense. So, but how truthful they can be to themselves, and where do you find yourself in this equation
Well,
between them and the issue and the discussion, so to
oh,
speak?
yeah. I've seen first of all, it seems almost impossible to predict who's going to make it and survive and be relatively satisfied with their marriage when they come in. There's a researcher, famous, written many books, John Gottman, who's done some pretty sophisticated research on this stuff. And he says he can tell with 95% accuracy or some such thing who's going to make it and who's not. But it depends. There are so many things that it depends on. Let's say you're crazy about, I'll make it personal. I don't know your wife. I don't know your marriage. But let's say you and your wife are fighting just ridiculously often, and it gets ugly and all of those things. Unless you try to fix that and then learn and bring the marriage to a point where you've accomplished quite a bit, how will you know if you want to stay together? Right? You got married for a reason. Sometimes people say, I never loved her, I never loved him. I have heard that. And probably they made a mistake in going along with a marriage under those loveless conditions. But in general, I think people think they're in love or convince themselves they're in love and got married for whatever those reasons were. If the reasons change, you grow in one direction, she grows in another. Sometimes it just can't work, but then often there's an amicable separation or divorce. It's so complicated because also if there are children or not, right? If it's just two people and they're not highly motivated to fix it. I really think that's the key.
Yeah. But when kids are a part of the equation, I remember my mentor and my representative told me that she realized that early on that she's a lesbian after she got married and
Okay.
had kids.
Hmm.
Um,
That happens.
and and in addition to that, her husband wasn't so the greatest person in the world, so it was difficult. And she really, 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 really didn't want to be a part of this.
Hmm.
But she made a Korean decision. She said, I will not leave this house and I would not complain until they're 18 and they're going to college, and that's it. No discussion, no further discussion. I'm not going to cry over my bad luck or my bad fortune. I'm just going to hold on to it, and and this is my role. How many people do you know that really accept this role?
Well,
And
I'm
and and but
amazed.
isn't it all about selflessness, really? Once you
Um,
have kids, it's not about you anymore, I
no,
believe.
Chaim, I have to tell you this. I have a book that I wrote about marriage, about people who stop speaking, who basically who become estranged, and a book about how to have a good marriage, that kind of thing. So the last chapter of one of the books, and truthfully, I can't remember which one, I recommend that a marriage license is issued if and only when parents know how to raise children, right? I made it up. It's a course.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
You take a course like the Catholics take a pre-Cana
yeah.
kind of thing. You take a course on raising children, and when you can demonstrate that you know how to handle a variety of situations, you then can get a marriage license, and then you're good to go to have children.
It's a way to reduce the population of the world
But
by
the
third.
license, first of all, it's very difficult to get the license. And now it's incredibly easy, right? You just walk into somebody's office and they stamp it, right? It should be very hard, and you should have uh, uh, an embroidered, I forget what you call it, when in the old days people would embroider,
Yeah, yeah.
here, welcome to our happy home kind of thing,
Yes, yes.
and you would put it above the fireplace, and people would walk into your house and say, "Oh my God, you got a marriage license? That's
Yes.
amazing."
Qualified.
Right. That means you can have children.
Oh my God.
Lucky you.
Oh
But
boy.
the new rule that I made in my last chapter was the license expires when your children are 18 or 21, whatever. And then
Automatically.
automatically,
Oh boy.
and then you can renew it,
Or
but
let it go.
or let it go. Isn't that
Oh
I thought it
boy.
was such
Well,
a cool
yes.
idea.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody, I haven't heard a story of anyone who openly announced that that's what they were going to do with their marriage, like the person you just described. They
Yeah.
get it. It's a responsibility. And at that point, you don't have to love your spouse. All you have to do is cohabit and, take care of the kids,
Yes.
co-parent.
Yes.
I don't know. It was an
Yeah.
idea.
It's intriguing
Yeah.
enough um, to think about. Maybe maybe uh, i- um, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, when you think of yourself first, when yourself comes first before
Hmm.
anything, it it helps you become lazier and lazier, really, if you think about
Yeah.
it, because it's all about trying to kind of shortcut and bypass
Yes.
and all this. I I can tell you my example is really probably one of the best that there is on planet Earth. Where I come from, don't get near me, my space, my this, my that, always excuses. And I said, well, if I'm alone, I don't take any chances that I'm going to hurt anyone. I'm alone. I travel alone, I see alone, I experience alone. And yeah, you can date here, date there. You're free to go. You're free to come, uh, and it doesn't feel so painful to be so selfish. When you're alone, because you're not hurting. It's what I mean.
Yeah.
But then you realize, obviously, if you're intelligent enough, that will bother you to no end. You're gonna have to do something about it. What is your
Well,
role in the world? What is your purpose with this life?
right.
All these questions, they come whether you invite them or not. But once you find yourself in the thick of it,
Yeah.
I always am very surprised that people are even more selfish than they already are in that equation where
I
they
get it.
need, they're called to duty
Yeah.
and they ignore that call altogether. So that's something that, and believe me, I'm a deep thinker. I can never get to the very beginning of that journey to the bottom of it.
I see that. I hate to say it because I often instinctively like a husband or a man in a relationship when I'm working with a couple. I resonate more to the man's feelings. And it's probably because women get more upset and angry in a session than men do, I've noticed. But in any case, I've seen a lot of men who withdraw in marital situations. And the complaint from the wife is I can do a perfect act. I make all the plans. I do the whole meal. He leaves the dishes on the dining room table or the table and walks out. Or he comes home, he opens the beer, and that starts the night. I could just go on and on and on. And the men say, she's just cranky and crabby all the time. She doesn't like anything I do. I work myself to the bone, and she doesn't even notice what I do. Yeah.
You
So
know,
and so it goes.
it takes place because you have too much time in your hands when you're not supposed to have any time available. That's already the indication.
Yeah.
I know it firsthand. So you have 5 kids, and my realization was that there's no more difficult than what's already difficult. There's no such thing as very painful. There's such thing that is painful. For me, painful is as painful as it can ever get. It doesn't have to be less painful, more painful in order to describe the pain.
Okay.
Pain is pain is pain is pain. So you have a first child and you're robbed of all of that which you're accustomed to, your identity. It messes with your immediate vicinity, with your placement in the world, everything. Very tough. I don't care who you are. Suddenly it's there. It's an insult to your manhoodness and your independence.
I,
Like, what's
I
happening
agree.
here?
I agree with
So,
everything you're
so
saying.
because I'm a deep thinker, for me, it's about, well, I might as well have 5 kids because I don't
You-
think it's going to be more difficult.
right.
What is the second kid going to rob or take away from me? I already, I gave everything to Mother
Yeah.
Nature
Yeah.
by having that kid. And having 5, maybe I'll be a little busier, but the concept of losing my identity to form a new one
Yeah.
is already taking place. And probably by the time I will get a second child, this process will be completed already.
Yeah.
So might as well have 5 kids. But then when you get into it and you realize that the husband and wife, they don't walk in sync, not even sometimes. Forget about it's not a military outfit, but
Right.
sometimes
Right.
that it clicks, then you go, oh my God, we just took it wonderful. Then it's not that you made the wrong decision with the wrong person doing the wrong thing. It's just that it's almost like a surprise to both of people. You know what I mean?
I will tell you freely that having children was the hardest adjustment I ever made, for sure.
Oh man,
Nothing compares to the shakeup in your life. For me, right? It was not easy.
we have 5 minutes left. Whether you believe it or not,
Okay.
we've been on the air for 55 minutes. But I really wanted to ask you a question. Do you treat friends or family members if you had to?
Um, well, family.
How easy or difficult is it?
Okay. I'll talk about it. if you're my friend and not my client, and note that I don't say
Patient.
patient, because client gives you status. Patient diminishes you if we're talking about conventional ways of thinking about patienthood. Anyway, repeat the question because I got lost.
Do you treat family members or friends?
Oh yeah, I'll talk. I have friends, and we'll talk about their problems. But my closest friends, we'll talk about mine also.
You mean officially or just in a different setting?
No,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
A
You got
friend
it.
is a friend,
Yes.
and a client is a client.
Yeah.
But
what makes the difference there? What is the difference that describes that?
How much I share, what kinds of things I share.
Okay.
We were talking about what I disclose, and I disclose a lot with clients, but more with friends. And with clients, I only disclose those things that I've worked through enough myself, right? If I'm I'll give you a terrible example, but it's the one that occurred to me. If my husband was dying and I couldn't reach whoever I was supposed to reach, and I'm hysterical because it's a problem I can't deal with, I won't call a client.
I see.
Right?
I got it.
Maybe a year later, I will tell them that my husband died, and I'll only tell some people because other people are dealing with things that would make it very difficult for them to hear.
That,
I have to gauge, whereas with a close friend, I do the same thing, but I'm not as careful.
Got it.
I'm more likely
Got
to.
it. That makes very much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that we sat for almost an hour and we didn't even manage to scratch the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, I have an idea. If you're willing to come periodically here and chat with me.
Oh, I would be happy to. And I didn't get to talk about serial killers.
Oh, we'll talk about everything your heart desires. But I hope that I manage not to ask you questions, but to initiate a discussion,
conversation.
Yeah, an interaction. I hope that came through. That I hate asking questions.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
yes.
And that's why I don't find myself asking questions. I find myself trying very hard for you to understand what it is that I'm trying to understand.
Right. No, I had a good time.
Yes. So you're pleasantly surprised that it's okay. We can continue.
You asked me what are the qualities of a really good therapist. If you don't have a sense of humor, just find something else. Find something else to do.
Yes. Or find a therapist.
Or find a therapist. If you can't be a person, just a person in the room. That's how I want to. Trying to help, but you're just. I will say the Yiddish thing that I say to people, I'm just another schlepper on the planet, trying to get
a meaningful
through.
One, though.
And yes, trying to get through in one piece if I can.
Yes, and I think you're doing so far very well.
Okay, thank you.
Let's just say we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday and as much as we're here this morning, Friday morning, August 23rd, year 2024. Tomorrow, my art exhibition at Ashwa Hall through Sunday. Price well, and would love to see you there. And how about I'll give you the last word?
Oh my goodness. Well, I appreciate your taking the time to explore what a family therapist does. It's in many ways quite different from regular therapy, individual therapy. And if listeners feel like they're afraid to reach out, but they want to, give it a try. If you're not happy enough with your circumstance,
always a good idea to do that.
You can check in.
Good. So we'll leave it at that. Again, thank you to Elena Lesser Bruun, and we're looking forward to have her here more often than not. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.